The transport ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Inside the cockpit, Commander Ji-hoon watched as the massive space station came into view. Vraxis Prime Station hung in space like a giant metal flower, its arms stretching out in all directions. This was the proving grounds, where warrior species from across the galaxy came to show their strength. Ji-hoon stood up and walked to the observation window. He was a tall man with short black hair and calm eyes. His uniform was simple and plain, nothing like the decorated armor he could see on the ships around them. Those ships belonged to the other species, the ones who had come to watch humanity's first trial. "Commander, we're being hailed by the station," said Minji from the communications console. She was younger than Ji-hoon, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "They're sending us docking instructions." "Thank you, Minji. Take us in slowly. Let's not rush this," Ji-hoon replied. In the cargo bay, 3 other humans prepared their equipment. Daehyun checked his weapons for the 5th time. He was the combat specialist, a man who had trained in every fighting style Earth could offer. Beside him, Sora organized her medical supplies with quick, efficient movements. She had been a field medic for 10 years and had seen more injuries than most doctors. Near the door, Hyunwoo worked on a portable computer, running final diagnostics on their gear. He was their engineer, the one who kept everything working when it mattered most. The ship landed with a gentle thud. As the doors opened, a wave of different smells hit them. The station's air was clean, but carried strange scents from 100 different worlds. The gravity felt lighter than Earth's, making each step feel slightly off. A delegation waited for them on the landing platform. At the front stood a massive creature that looked like it was made of dark metal and muscle. It stood at least 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red. This was War Marshal Threxnor of the Kralix Empire. His species had ruled the warrior rankings for 300 years. "So, these are the humans," Threxnor's voice rumbled through a translator device. "Smaller than I expected. Weaker too, I imagine." Ji-hoon walked forward and stopped a respectful distance away. "War Marshal Threxnor, we are honored to be here." "Honored?" The massive alien laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "You should be terrified. Do you know how many species have failed these trials? Do you know what happens to those who cannot prove their worth?" "They go home," Ji-hoon said simply. "And we will do the same if we fail. But we did not come here to fail." Threxnor leaned down, bringing his massive head close to Ji-hoon's. "Confidence. I like that. It makes the disappointment so much sweeter." He straightened up and gestured to the station. "Come, the council awaits. They are eager to see what Earth's warriors can do." The human team followed Threxnor through the station's corridors. Other aliens stopped to stare at them. Some whispered to each other, others simply laughed. Ji-hoon kept his face neutral, but he could feel his team's tension growing. "Ignore them," he said quietly in Korean. "Let them laugh now. We'll show them what we can do soon enough." They entered a massive arena that could hold 100,000 beings. The stands were already filling up with creatures from across the galaxy. Some had scales, others had fur. Some floated in the air while others crawled on multiple legs. Every major species had sent representatives to watch the humans. In the center of the arena stood a raised platform. 7 beings sat there, each one representing the Galactic Council. They were the leaders of the most powerful civilizations in known space. The central figure, an ancient being that looked like living crystal, spoke. Its voice came through perfectly in the translator. "Humans of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Council. To earn this honor, you must prove that your species deserves to stand among us. You must show us your warriors, your tactics, your strength." Ji-hoon stepped forward. "We understand, Council Elder. We are ready to begin." "Eager, aren't we?" Another council member spoke, this one resembling a giant insect with multiple eyes. "Very well. The trials will begin tomorrow at dawn. You will face the same test that every species has faced: combat demonstrations, endurance trials, strategic challenges, and finally, the breaking point scenario." "We accept all challenges," Ji-hoon said, the crystal being leaned forward. You should know, humans, that in 300 years, no species has surpassed the Kralix in these trials. War Marshal Threxnor's people have set records that stand to this day. What makes you think you can compete? Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We don't know if we can compete with the Kralix Council Elder. We only know that we must try. That's what humans do. We try, even when success seems impossible." This answer seemed to surprise the council. They looked at each other, communicating in ways the humans couldn't understand. Finally, the crystal being nodded. "Very well. You have spirit, at least. Tomorrow we will see if you have anything more." The humans were shown to their quarters, small rooms near the arena. As soon as the door closed, Daehyun let out a long breath. "Did you see the size of that Kralix? One of them could probably fight all 5 of us." "Probably," Ji-hoon agreed. "But size isn't everything. We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. Tomorrow, we show them what humanity can do." Sora unpacked her gear carefully. "What do you think they expect from us?" "They expect us to fail," Minji said from where she sat checking her tablet. "I've been reading the records. 70% of species fail the first trial. 90% never make it past the endurance test." Hyunwoo looked up from his computer. "Then we'll be in the 10%, simple as that." Ji-hoon smiled at his team's confidence. "Get some rest, everyone. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. And remember, no matter what happens, we represent Earth. Every human who ever lived, who ever fought, who ever refused to give up. That's what we carry with us." That night, while the other species slept in their quarters or celebrated in the station's bars, the humans did something different. They gathered in the small gym attached to their quarters. Without a word, they began their evening routine. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. The same exercises they had done every night for years. In the observation room above, a junior technician from the Shardborn species watched the monitors. He saw the humans exercising and frowned in confusion. The trials hadn't even started yet. Why were they training? He made a note in his report, flagging it as unusual behavior. He had no way of knowing that this simple observation would be the first hint of what was to come. The galaxy's greatest warriors were about to learn something new. They were about to learn what it meant to be human. Outside the window, stars twinkled in the endless night of space, uncaring and eternal. Tomorrow, everything would change. The arena was packed when morning came. Beings from 100 worlds filled the massive stands, all waiting to see the combat demonstrations. The air buzzed with excitement and conversation in 1,000 different languages. The translator devices worked overtime, trying to keep up with all the chatter. Ji-hoon and his team stood in the waiting area beneath the arena floor. They could hear the crowd above them, the sounds of anticipation growing louder. Through the walls, they heard the announcer calling out the first demonstration. The Kralix Empire will now demonstrate their legendary death spiral formation. The crowd roared with approval. The humans couldn't see what was happening, but they could hear it. The sound of heavy footsteps moving in perfect rhythm. The clash of weapons against shields. The crowd's cheers growing louder and louder until they reached a fever pitch. Then sudden silence, followed by explosive applause. Minji looked at Ji-hoon. "They're good. Really good." "Of course they are," Ji-hoon replied. "They've been doing this for centuries. But remember, we're not here to be them. We're here to be us." Next came the Vrel, the insect-like hive mind species. The humans listened as thousands of small creatures moved as one, creating patterns and formations that would be impossible for individuals. The crowd seemed fascinated, their applause respectful and sustained. Then the Shardborn took their turn. Even through the walls, the humans could feel the temperature drop. The crystalline beings demonstrated combat in conditions that would freeze most life forms solid. The crowd gasped and cheered at their resilience. Finally, the announcer's voice called out, "And now, the newest applicants to the Galactic Council. From the planet Earth in the Sol system, we present the humans." The floor panel opened, and bright light flooded down. Ji-hoon led his team up into the arena. The noise hit them like a physical force. 100,000 beings all staring at them. Most of the faces showed curiosity. Many showed amusement. Some showed outright contempt. The council elder's voice boomed across the arena. "Humans of Earth, show us your warriors. Show us your power." Demonstrate why your species deserves to stand among the great civilizations of the galaxy. Ji-hoon walked to the center of the arena. He looked small under the massive lights, surrounded by beings much larger and more impressive than himself. He raised his hand, requesting permission to speak. "Council elders, honored guests," he began. "We have seen magnificent displays of power today. The Kralik showed strength and coordination. The Vrel showed perfect unity. The Shardborn showed incredible adaptation. These are all impressive warrior qualities." He paused, looking around the arena. "But we humans believe that a warrior's true strength is not shown in a single demonstration. It is shown in daily discipline, in constant preparation. So, with your permission, we would like to show you something different. We would like to show you our morning routine." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Kralik's delegation began to laugh. War Marshal Threxnor stood up in his box seat, his voice carrying across the arena. "Your morning routine? This is the proving grounds, not a show of daily habits. We want to see combat." The council elder raised a crystalline hand for silence. "This is unusual, but we will permit it. Humans, proceed." Ji-hoon nodded to his team. They spread out across the arena floor, forming a line. Then, without any fanfare or dramatic music, they began to run. Just run. Around the arena's perimeter, one lap after another. The crowd's confusion grew. Some laughed openly. Others looked to their neighbors, wondering if this was some kind of joke. The humans weren't even in their armor. They wore simple exercise clothes and basic running shoes. They had no weapons, no shields, no technology on display. "This is ridiculous," someone shouted from the stands. "They're just running." But the humans kept running. One lap became 5. 5 became 10. Their breathing grew heavier, but they maintained their pace. Sweat began to show on their clothes. Still they ran. A Vrel scientist in the stands pulled out a scanner. "How long have they been running?" she asked her companion. 23 minutes, came the reply. "At that pace, in this gravity, with no enhancement suits." The scientist's multiple eyes widened. Their cardiovascular systems must be incredibly efficient. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. Some members of the crowd began to leave, bored by the display. Others stayed, growing more curious. Why were the humans still running? When would they stop? After 50 minutes, one of the humans began to slow. It was Taijin, a younger member of the team who had joined them just for this demonstration. His face was red, his breathing ragged. He stumbled, almost fell, then caught himself. The crowd leaned forward. Finally, the humans would stop this madness. But Sora, the medic, ran up beside Taijin. She didn't use any medical device. She didn't inject him with anything. She simply handed him a bottle of water and said something the translators caught. "Drink, breathe, keep moving." Taijin drank the water. He took several deep breaths. Then, impossibly, he started running again. The crowd's laughter had stopped. Now there was only confusion and growing unease. At the 1-hour mark, Ji-hoon finally raised his hand. The team stopped running and formed up in the center of the arena. They were all breathing hard, soaked with sweat, but they stood at attention. "This is how every human warrior begins their day," Ji-hoon announced. "Running, building endurance, strengthening our bodies without technology, without enhancements, just us and the effort we choose to make." War Marshal Threxnor stood again. "You torture yourselves? You damage your own bodies before battle? This is not strength. This is stupidity." Ji-hoon looked up at the massive Kralix warrior. "With respect, War Marshal, we do not see it as torture. We see it as preparation. Every morning we push our bodies to their limits. We learn what those limits are. We learn how to function when tired, when hurting, when every part of us wants to stop. Because in real combat, those moments will come, and we need to know we can continue." A voice came from the council seats. It was an older being, one the humans hadn't seen before. It looked like a floating sphere of energy, ancient and wise. "War Marshal, contain yourself. I wish to hear more." The energy being floated down closer to the arena floor. "Humans, you say you do this every morning? Every single day?" "Yes, Elder," Ji-hoon confirmed. "Every day, sometimes twice a day. Running is just the beginning. We also do exercises to build strength. Push-ups where we lift our own body weight with our arms. Sit-ups to strengthen our core. Pull-ups, squats, many others. We do these until our muscles fail, and then we rest and do them again." "But why?" the being asked, genuinely curious. "You have technology. You have enhancement suits. Why suffer like this?" Minji stepped forward to answer. "Because technology can fail, Elder. Suits can break. Weapons can jam, but the strength we build in our own bodies, the endurance we develop, the mental toughness we forge through daily suffering, these things cannot be taken from us. These things are ours forever. The arena had gone very quiet. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. They were listening, trying to understand this strange species that chose to suffer every single day. Daehyun added, "There's an old saying on Earth, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war. We would rather suffer here in safety building ourselves stronger than suffer in battle because we weren't prepared." The ancient energy being was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke, and its voice carried a note of respect that hadn't been there before. "I see you do not train for war. You live in a state of constant preparation. Every day is training. Every day is a test you give yourselves." "Yes, Elder," Ji-hoon confirmed. "That is the human way." The being floated back to its seat. The council elder looked at the humans with new interest. "This is most unusual. We have never seen such an approach. We will consider what we have witnessed. Tomorrow the endurance trials begin. We will see if your daily suffering translates to actual capability." As the humans left the arena, the crowd remained mostly silent. Some still thought the humans were crazy, but others, the wise ones, the experienced ones, had begun to understand. They had seen something today that disturbed them deeply. They had seen a species that embraced suffering as a path to strength, and they wondered what else these humans were capable of. In the council chambers, the leaders discussed what they had seen. The conversation would go late into the night. The humans had not impressed them with strength or technology, but they had done something perhaps more important. They had made the council think, and in the galaxy's long history, very few species had managed that on their first day. Day 3 arrived with growing anticipation. Word had spread through the station about the humans' strange demonstration. Some species thought they were crazy. Others thought they were weak, trying to hide their lack of real power behind philosophy. But everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The humans entered the arena to find it reconfigured. The floor had been divided into sections, each one designed for different types of combat demonstrations. Weapons racks lined the walls. Training equipment stood ready. This was meant to be a proper display of warrior skills. But before the demonstrations could begin, Ji-hoon approached the council platform with a request. The council elder listened, then looked confused. "You wish to change the arena's gravity settings?" The elder asked. "Yes, council elder. We would like to demonstrate our combat skills under Earth normal gravity. 1.0 G to be precise," the crowd murmured. The standard arena gravity was set at 0.8 G, a compromise that accommodated most species comfortably. The difference between 0.8 and 1.0 was small. Most species wouldn't even notice it. War Marshal Threxnor laughed from his seat. "They want heavier gravity? Perhaps they think it will make them seem stronger. Very well. Let them have their small advantage. It will make no difference," the council elder nodded. "Granted. Arena operators adjust gravity to Earth normal specifications." The change was subtle. Most of the crowd didn't feel anything different. But then something strange happened. The humans, all 5 of them, reached down and began removing pieces of equipment they had been wearing under their uniforms. Vests, thick and heavy, came off one by one. Hyunwoo held his vest up for the crowd to see. "These are weighted vests. Each one weighs 20 kilograms. We've been wearing them since we arrived at the station." A shocked silence fell over the arena. The humans had been carrying extra weight this entire time? During their running demonstration? During every movement they had made? Sora explained further, her voice calm and clear. "On Earth we train with extra weight. We train in higher gravity than our homeworld when we can. We train in conditions harder than what we'll face in real situations. This way, when we fight for real, everything feels lighter. Everything feels easier." The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. A Vrel scientist stood up in the stands. "Impossible. The physical stress of carrying that much extra weight in your already demonstrated exercises would cause severe damage to your biological systems." "It does," Ji-hoon confirmed. "When we first start this training, it hurts. Our muscles tear, our bones stress, our cardiovascular systems struggle. But then our bodies adapt. They grow stronger. They rebuild themselves tougher than before. It's called progressive overload. We continuously increase the difficulty, so our bodies must continuously adapt." The council elder leaned forward, truly interested now. "And all human warriors train this way?" All of them, Minji answered. From the moment they begin training. We start with lighter weights and build up over time. Some of our elite soldiers train with even more weight than this. Some train at 1.5 Earth gravity when facilities allow it. Daehyun stepped forward, rolling his shoulders now that the vest was off. Council elders, with your permission, we would now like to demonstrate our actual combat capabilities, without the training weights, under normal Earth conditions. The permission was granted. The crowd settled in, skeptical but curious. What difference could it really make? The difference was dramatic. Daehyun moved to the combat demonstration area. His opponent was a Kralix warrior, not War Marshal Threxnor, but still a formidable fighter. The Kralix was nearly twice Daehyun's size, with 4 arms to Daehyun's 2. The match began and the crowd gasped. Daehyun moved like lightning. Movements that had seemed merely adequate during the running demonstration now appeared explosive. He ducked under the Kralix's first strike with blinding speed. His counterattack was a blur, striking 3 pressure points before the Kralix could react. The larger warrior stumbled back, shocked. No one had ever moved that fast against a Kralix before, not without powered armor or enhancement fields. Daehyun didn't press his advantage. He stepped back and bowed respectfully. Again? He asked. The Kralix warrior nodded, angry now. He attacked with all 4 arms, using the devastating combinations that had won countless battles. But Daehyun flowed around the attacks like water. Every strike missed by centimeters. And then Daehyun struck back, his movements precise and controlled. He could have done serious damage, but he held back, demonstrating skill rather than trying to injure. After 3 exchanges, the Kralix warrior stopped and stepped back. He looked at his hands, then at Daehyun, then at his hands again. How? He asked simply. Training, Daehyun replied. Every day for hours. We practice movements until they become automatic. We train tired, we train hurt, we train under every condition we can imagine. So when we fight fresh, when we fight in normal conditions, our bodies can do things that seem impossible. Next came the marksmanship demonstration. Minji stood at the firing line with a simple rifle. No computer-assisted targeting, no auto-tracking systems, just a mechanical weapon with basic sights. The targets appeared at various distances, some close, some far, some moving, some still. The standard test was to hit 60% of the targets within the time limit. The best recorded score was the Kralix at 78%. Minji took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and began firing. Each shot was deliberate. Each movement was controlled. She compensated for wind, for distance, for the target's movement, all with calculations done in her own mind. When the time ended, the scoring system displayed the results. 96% accuracy. The crowd erupted in disbelief. The scoring system must be broken. There must be some mistake. But when they checked, everything was functioning correctly. Minji had simply been that accurate. An old Shardborn warrior, a veteran of countless battles, stood up slowly in the stands. That's impossible without computer assistance. The calculations required, the precision needed. Minji looked up at the warrior. Not impossible, honored veteran. Just difficult. We have a saying on Earth, perfect practice makes perfect. We don't just practice shooting. We practice breathing. We practice heartbeat control. We practice making our bodies completely still between shots. We do this thousands of times, tens of thousands of times, until our bodies know exactly what to do. Hyunwoo then demonstrated something that shocked the engineers in the crowd. He was given a broken piece of advanced technology, something most species would need specialized tools to repair. He studied it for a moment, then began working on it with basic tools. His hands moved with absolute confidence, taking apart components, rerouting systems, rebuilding connections. He worked for 15 minutes, then activated the device. It worked perfectly. A Vrel engineer called out from the stands. How did you know how to repair that? That technology is Shardborn design, not human. Hyunwoo held up his hands. I didn't know the exact design, honored engineer. But I know principles. I know how energy flows, how systems connect, how components interact. We train to understand fundamentals, not just memorize specific designs. We train to adapt and solve problems, not just follow instructions. The demonstration continued. Sora showed medical skills that worked across species barriers. Ji-hoon demonstrated tactical thinking that accounted for variables the other species hadn't even considered. Each human showed capabilities that seemed to exceed what their biology should allow. Finally, the demonstrations ended. The humans stood together in the center of the arena, breathing harder than before but standing tall. The crowd was absolutely silent. The ancient energy being from the council floated down again. Its voice, when it spoke, carried a weight of understanding. I begin to see. You do not train to become strong. You train to discover how strong you can become. You do not train to learn techniques. You train to understand principles. You do not train for war. You train to transcend your own limitations. Ji-hoon nodded. Yes, Elder, every human has limits. But we have learned that those limits are further away than we think. Pain is just a signal. Exhaustion is just a state. By pushing past them every day in training, we learn that we are capable of more than we believe. This is the human way. Not to accept our limits, but to constantly test them and push beyond them. War Marshal Threxnor had been quiet throughout most of the demonstrations. Now he stood, his massive form dominating his viewing box. But his voice, when he spoke, was no longer mocking. It was thoughtful, almost respectful. We Kraliks are born strong. We are bred for war. Our bodies are weapons from birth. He paused, looking at the small humans below. But you are born weak, and you choose to make yourself strong through daily suffering, every single day. For your entire lives. Yes, War Marshal, Ji-hoon confirmed. That is correct. The Kraliks warrior was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that shocked everyone in the arena. I am not sure which is more impressive, our natural strength, or your chosen strength. The council elder called for order as the crowd erupted in discussion. The humans were dismissed, but as they left the arena, they could feel the change in the atmosphere. The laughter was gone. The contempt had vanished. In its place was something the humans had not expected to earn so quickly. Respect. And from some of the announcement came without warning. The council elder's voice echoed through the arena on the morning of Day 5. We are implementing a surprise endurance trial. All participating species must maintain full combat readiness for 72 continuous hours. No sleep enhancement technology. No medical stimulants beyond basic safety requirements. This begins now. The crowd murmured with interest. This was a classic test, one that appeared regularly in the proving grounds. Most species had biological adaptations or technological aids for extended wakefulness. The Kraliks could fight for 48 hours straight through pure biological resilience. The Shardborn entered low-power modes that served as rest while maintaining alertness. The Vrel's hive mind allowed portions to rest while others stayed active. The humans gathered in their designated area of the arena. Ji-hoon looked at his team. Standard watch rotation. 4-hour shifts, teams of 2. Everyone else sleeps when they can. Minji pulled out a simple notebook and began writing down the schedule. Daehyun and I will take the first watch. Ji-hoon and Sora, you're up next. Hyunwoo and Taejin will take third rotation. The other species watched with curiosity as the humans set up their area. They laid out sleeping mats, organized their equipment within easy reach, and established clear sight lines for whoever was on watch. Then, incredibly, 3 of the humans simply lay down and went to sleep. Just like that, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. A young Kraliks warrior pointed at the sleeping humans. Look, they're sleeping already. The test just started and they're giving up. But War Marshal Threxnor, who had been watching the humans more carefully since their demonstrations, held up a hand. Wait, watch what the other 2 are doing. Daehyun and Minji had taken positions where they could see all approaches to their area. They weren't just sitting there. Daehyun was performing equipment checks, his movements methodical and precise. Minji was studying tactical data on a tablet, but her eyes kept scanning the environment, missing nothing. 4 hours passed. The Kraliks were performing combat drills to stay alert. The Vrel were in a state of active meditation. The Shardborn had dimmed their energy cores to conserve power while remaining aware. Then, exactly at the 4-hour mark, Minji walked over to where Ji-hoon was sleeping. She didn't shake him roughly or shout. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke his name quietly. Ji-hoon, your watch. Ji-hoon's eyes opened immediately. There was no grogginess, no confusion. He sat up, fully alert, and nodded. Within 2 minutes, he and Sora had taken over the watch positions. Minji and Daehyun lay down and impossibly fell asleep almost instantly. A Shardborn scientist named Krelix was monitoring all the species with his instruments. He saw the humans' biological readings and cross-checked them 3 times, certain his equipment was malfunctioning. But the readings were accurate. The sleeping humans had entered deep sleep almost immediately. Their heart rates had dropped to optimal rest levels. Their brain patterns showed genuine restorative sleep. and the ones on watch showed heightened alertness, their focus sharp and clear. How are they doing this? He muttered to himself. The pattern continued. Every 4 hours, the humans rotated with mechanical precision. The ones waking up were alert immediately. The ones going to sleep dropped off within minutes, and the ones on watch never seemed to lose focus. By hour 24, the strain was starting to show on the other species. The Kraliks were using stimulant injections, carefully measured to avoid dangerous levels. The Vrel's hive mind coordination was becoming slightly erratic. The Shardborn had entered a semi-dormant state, their response time slowing. The humans rotated again. Hyunwoo and Taejin took their watch. Hyunwoo pulled out a small toolkit and began performing maintenance on their equipment. As he worked, he hummed something under his breath. The translator picked it up and projected it for the observers. I don't know, but I've been told, something streets of gold. I don't know, but it's been said, something painted red. A council observer who specialized in human culture looked up sharply. That's a cadence, a military marching song. They sing these during training to maintain rhythm and morale. Hyunwoo noticed he was being observed and smiled. Sorry, habit. We sing these during long missions. Helps pass the time, keeps the brain engaged. Hour 36 arrived. The Kraliks were now in visible discomfort. Their movements had become sluggish. War Marshal Threxnor himself looked strained, his eyes showing the effort of staying alert. The Vrel had pulled their collective into a tighter formation, compensating for reduced individual awareness. The Shardborn were barely responsive, their crystalline forms dim. The humans rotated again. Jihoon and Sora took the watch. As Jihoon settled into position, a young observer called down to him. How are you doing this? Don't you feel tired? Jihoon looked up. Of course we're tired. We're not immune to fatigue, but we're trained for this. Trained for what exactly? The observer pressed. Sora answered this time. We call it sleep discipline. The ability to sleep when you can, where you can, for as long as you can. Every human soldier learns this early in training. You don't wait until you feel comfortable or safe to sleep. You sleep when the opportunity exists because you don't know when the next opportunity will come. Jihoon continued. And we learn to wake up alert. No transition period, no grogginess. When you're on duty, especially on watch, you need to be fully functional immediately. So we train that way. Someone wakes us up, we're ready to fight in seconds. But you're truly sleeping? Another observer asked. Not just resting? Deep sleep, Minji confirmed from where she was lying down. Her eyes were closed, but she was still aware enough to speak. Another few minutes and I'll be completely out. Our bodies know how to grab rest efficiently. Years of training and sleep deprivation teaches you that. Hour 48 arrived. This was the point where the Kraliks typically began to dominate these trials. Their biology was designed for extended combat operations. But War Marshal Threxnor was now visibly struggling. His movements were slow, his eyes heavy. He had been awake for 48 hours straight, relying on his species' natural endurance and carefully measured stimulants. The humans rotated again. They were on their third full cycle now, 12 rotations completed, and they seemed impossibly to be stable. Not getting worse, just maintaining. Daehyun was on watch now with Minji. He performed a set of exercises, basic movements to keep his blood flowing. Jumping jacks, squats, arm rotations. Then he settled back into his watching position, scanning the environment with clear eyes. A Kraliks junior officer couldn't contain himself anymore. He called down to the humans. This is week 1 of your basic training? You said before that this is what you do in week 1? Week 1 through week 12. Jihoon confirmed from his sleeping mat, not opening his eyes. Basic combat training. 12 weeks. This kind of schedule, this kind of rotation, constantly. We do it until it becomes automatic. Until our bodies just know how to function on limited sleep and rotating rest. 12 weeks, the Kraliks officer repeated, stunned. 12 weeks of sleep deprivation training. You do this to every soldier? Every single one, Minji confirmed. And that's just basic training. Specialized units train even harder. Some special operations soldiers go through exercises where they get maybe 4 hours of sleep total over a week. Not per night. Total. For an entire week. The crowd was silent, processing this information. They were watching the humans complete a challenge that was breaking the galaxy's greatest warriors, and the humans were treating it like a routine exercise. Because for them it was... Hour 60 arrived. The Kraliks had begun to withdraw from the trial. War Marshal Threxnor himself admitted defeat, his pride crushed by the simple reality that his body could no longer function safely. The Vrel's hive mind had fragmented, individual members falling into involuntary rest states. The Shardborn were completely dormant, having hit their energy conservation limits. The humans rotated again, Hyunwoo and Taejin on watch. Both were showing signs of fatigue now, moving a bit slower but still completely functional. Taejin yawned, stretched, and then resumed his scan pattern without missing a beat. A junior member of the council, a being made of flowing liquid metal, approached the human area. "How much longer can you continue?" Ji-hoon, on his rest period but still aware, answered without opening his eyes. "Honestly, at this rotation rate with proper sleep discipline, we could maintain for weeks. Not comfortably, not without long-term health impacts, but we could function. The human body is remarkably resilient when trained properly." "Weeks?" The council member's voice was shocked. "But the other species are already failing at 60 hours. Sora, also resting, spoke up. "With respect, council member, they're failing because they're fighting their biology. They're trying to stay awake through the entire trial. We're working with our biology. We're sleeping when we can, staying alert when we must. It's not about being stronger. It's about being smarter with the strength we have." Hour 72 arrived. The trial officially ended. The humans completed their final rotation and were called to the center of the arena. All 5 of them walked out, tired but functional. The final trial was called the Breaking Point Scenario. It was designed by the galaxy's best military strategists to find the exact moment when a warrior would give up. Every species had one, a point where the odds were so overwhelming, where the situation was so hopeless, that surrender became the only logical choice. Finding that point was considered essential data for understanding any warrior culture. The council elder explained the rules to the assembled species. Each participant will enter a combat simulation. The scenario will escalate continuously until the participant signals surrender or becomes unable to continue. There is no shame in surrender. This trial is designed to be impossible. We only wish to see how each species handles inevitable defeat. The Kralix went first. 50 warriors entered the simulation, facing increasingly difficult odds. They fought brilliantly, using their superior strength and four-armed combat techniques to devastating effect. They held against 5-to-1 odds, even 8-to-1. But at 12-to-1, with ammunition depleted and warriors wounded, their commander made the logical choice. He signaled surrender. The crowd applauded respectfully. The Kralix had lasted longer than most species ever did. The Vrel went next. Their hive mind gave them an advantage in coordination. They held against 15-to-1 odds through perfect tactical synchronization. But when a specific frequency weapon was introduced that disrupted their collective consciousness, their unity shattered. They surrendered quickly after that, knowing that a fractured hive mind could not compete. The Shardborn faced environmental challenges along with combat. They adapted brilliantly, modifying their forms to handle each new threat. But eventually the energy drain became too much. At 20-to-1 odds with depleting power cores, they too signaled surrender. Every species had their moment, their breaking point. It was expected. It was natural. The trial was designed to find it. Then the humans entered the simulation. Ji-hoon led his team into the virtual battlefield. The scenario began simply. 5 humans against 10 enemies. Standard combat situation. The humans took cover, conserved ammunition, and systematically eliminated threats. Victory came quickly. The scenario escalated. 15 enemies. The humans adjusted their tactics, used the terrain better, and still won. 20 enemies. 30. The humans were being pushed now, taking simulated injuries, running lower on ammunition. But they kept adapting. In the observation room, the scenario director increased the difficulty again. 40 enemies, and he limited the humans' ammunition supply. Surely this would force a surrender. Instead, Ji-hoon's voice came through the communication system, calm and measured. Conserve ammunition. Aimed shots only. Taehyun, prepare for close combat if needed. The humans began rationing their shots. Each bullet had to count. When ammunition ran critically low, they didn't panic. Taehyun simply drew a combat knife and prepared to engage at close range. The director stared at his screens in disbelief. He increased the odds again. 50 enemies, 60. He introduced equipment malfunctions. One of the humans' weapons jammed. They simply switched to another weapon. That one jammed too. They used the weapons as clubs. At 80-to-1 odds with multiple simulated injuries, nearly out of ammunition and fighting with improvised weapons, the humans still hadn't surrendered. In the arena, the crowd watched the displays in stunned silence. They could see the humans' vital signs. Pain indicators were maxed out. Fatigue levels were critical. Any other species would have given up 10 scenarios ago. Sora's character took a direct hit that would incapacitate any other species. The simulation showed her applying a tourniquet to her own leg, taking a pain medication injection, and then continuing to fire her weapon with one hand while dragging herself to better cover. War Marshal Threxnor stood up slowly in his viewing box. His voice was quiet, almost awed. "They're not going to surrender, are they?" The scenario director heard this through his communication link. He made a decision. He would push until the system itself reached its limits. He escalated to 100 enemies. 120. He introduced environmental hazards, equipment failures, reduced visibility. Ji-hoon's team adapted to everything. When they ran completely out of ammunition, they used their environment as a weapon. When injuries made movement difficult, they adjusted their tactics to compensate. When visibility dropped to nearly zero, they used sound and touch to coordinate. At 160-to-1 odds, the scenario director ran out of standard escalation protocols. He had never needed to go this far before. He started introducing completely new challenges, things not in the original program. The humans kept fighting. Minji's character lost the use of both legs in the simulation. She pulled herself into a defensive position using her arms and continued to coordinate the team's movements. Daehyun, 3 enemies approaching from your left. Hyunwoo, you have a clear shot at the cluster near the eastern building. Her voice was strained with simulated pain, but it was clear and focused. 16 hours into the scenario, the impossible happened. The simulation ran out of enemy units. The computer had a maximum capacity for how many enemies it could generate, and the humans had been fighting long enough that they had literally exhausted the system's ability to create new threats. The scenario director sat back in his chair, staring at his screens. "This shouldn't be possible," he whispered. The council elder's voice came through on his communication link. "And the scenario? The humans have..." "We have seen enough." The simulation ended. The 5 humans stood in the arena, their simulated injuries displayed on the screens above. According to the medical readouts, all 5 should have been unconscious or dead. Instead, they stood at attention, waiting for instructions. The arena was completely silent. 100,000 beings and not one made a sound. The council elder's voice finally broke the silence. In the 300-year history of the breaking point scenario, no species has ever exceeded 50-to-1 odds. The previous record was held by the Kralix at 48-to-1. You have... The elder paused as if struggling to believe its own words. You have exceeded 160-to-1, and you only stopped because our simulation system reached its maximum capacity. Ji-hoon's breathing was heavy, but his voice was steady. Council Elder, permission to speak freely? Granted, Commander Ji-hoon. The scenario was designed to find our breaking point. But there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't have a breaking point. Not in the way you think. War Marshal Threxnor's voice carried across the arena. Impossible. Every species has a limit. Every warrior has a moment where they must surrender or die. Ji-hoon turned to face the Kralix leader. You're right, War Marshal. We do have limits. Our bodies break. Our equipment fails. We run out of ammunition, out of strength, out of options. But breaking and surrendering are 2 different things. Sora stepped forward, favoring her leg even though the simulation was over, the phantom pain still affecting her movements. In human military culture, we have a concept called fighting to the last round. It means you keep going until you literally cannot continue. Not until it seems hopeless, not until the odds are bad, until you physically cannot fight anymore. Daehyun added, and even then we have protocols. If we can't shoot, we use knives. If we can't use knives, we use our hands. If we can't stand, we fight from the ground. There's always one more thing we can try, always one more action we can take. Minji pulled up a display on her tablet and projected it for the council to see. This is from human military history. A battle called the Alamo. A small group of humans held a position against thousands of enemies. They knew they would lose. They knew they would die. They fought anyway for 13 days until every single one of them was dead. They never surrendered. She changed the display. This is called the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 humans held a narrow pass against hundreds of thousands of enemies. They knew the mission was suicide. They went anyway. They fought for 3 days. They never surrendered. More images appeared. This is called the Siege of Leningrad. A city surrounded for 900 days. People starving, freezing, dying by the thousands. They never surrendered. This is the Battle of Stalingrad. Months of brutal combat in the ruins of a city. Casualties in the millions. They never surrendered. Yunwu spoke next. You designed your scenario to find when we would give up. But you based it on your own psychology. You assumed there would be a logical point where surrender made sense, where the odds were so bad that any rational being would stop fighting. Ji-hoon finished the thought. But humans aren't always rational about survival. We have something we call fighting spirit or warrior ethos. It's not about logic. It's about refusing to quit, about making the enemy pay for every inch of ground, about fighting not because we think we can win, but because surrendering isn't in our nature. The ancient energy being floated down from the council seats. Its voice when it spoke was very quiet. You're saying that humans would rather die than surrender? Not always, Ji-hoon clarified. In some situations, surrender is the right choice. To save lives, to preserve forces for another day, we understand tactical surrender. The council chambers were filled with tension. The human team stood in the center, surrounded by representatives from 47 warrior species. The gallery was packed with observers, everyone wanting to witness what would happen next. The humans had broken every expectation, shattered every record, and forced the galaxy to reconsider what it thought it knew about warfare. Council Elder Morthus, the ancient crystalline being, spoke first. Its voice resonated through the chamber. We have observed your demonstrations. We have tested your endurance. We have pushed you to what should have been your breaking point, and now we must understand. What drives this behavior? What philosophy creates warriors like you? Ji-hoon stepped forward. Council Elder, may I explain using our own history and culture? Please do. We wish to understand. Ji-hoon took a breath and began. On Earth, there is a phrase we use. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war. This is the foundation of everything we do. We believe that preparation, real preparation, requires suffering, not because we enjoy pain, but because pain teaches lessons that comfort cannot. Minji continued the explanation. Every civilization here became powerful through natural advantages. The Kraliks have incredible strength. The Vrel have their hive mind. The Shardborn can survive in environments that would kill most life. You were born with these advantages. She paused, making sure everyone was listening. Humans were born with nothing. No claws, no armor, no venom. We were slow compared to predators, weak compared to larger animals, fragile compared to the environment itself. So we had to create our advantages, and the advantage we created was adaptability through training. Daehyun stepped forward. Let me give you an example. On Earth, we have special military units, elite soldiers. To join these units, humans must pass through selection courses. These courses are designed to be almost impossible. Candidates go days without sleep. They carry heavy loads for miles and miles. They're cold, wet, hungry, and exhausted. Most candidates fail. Maybe 70, 80, even 90% fail. A Kralik's general interrupted. Why design training that most cannot pass? Isn't that wasteful? That's exactly the point, Daehyun replied. The training isn't just about physical skills. It's about finding out who will quit and who won't. Because in real combat, physical skills matter less than mental strength. A soldier with average skills who never quits is worth more than a brilliant soldier who gives up when things get hard. Sora added, in one of our elite units, there's a moment in training called Hell Week. Candidates get maybe 4 hours of sleep total over 5 days. They are in freezing water, covered in sand, carrying boats on their heads, running until their feet bleed. The instructors constantly tell them they can quit. They can be warm, dry, and comfortable if they just give up. And many do. They choose comfort over suffering. She looked around the chamber. But the ones who continue, who finish Hell Week, they learn something important. They learn that their minds will quit long before their bodies do. They learn that the voice in their head saying, I can't, is lying. They learn that they can endure far more than they ever thought possible, and that lesson stays with them forever. Hyunwoo brought up a holographic display. This is data from human military training. Look at these graphs. They show performance over time. Notice how performance initially drops? That's the breaking down phase. The body is stressed, damaged, pushed past its limits. He changed the display. But then look what happens. Performance shoots up higher than it started. The body adapts. Muscles grow stronger. Endurance increases. The mind becomes more resilient. This is called progressive overload. We continuously increase stress so the body continuously adapts. Other species use technology to enhance their soldiers. We use suffering to forge them. The ancient energy being who had been listening intently floated closer. But surely this causes damage. Long-term harm to your people? It can, Sora admitted. If done incorrectly, yes. That's why we've spent centuries perfecting the balance. We push hard enough to create adaptation, but not so hard that we cause permanent damage. We have medical professionals, nutritionists, psychologists all working together to ensure our training makes soldiers stronger, not broken. War Marshal Threxnor had been unusually quiet. Now he stood, his massive form dominating the chamber. I have a question for the humans. You speak of elite units, special soldiers, but your demonstration team claims this is basic training, standard for all warriors. Is this true? Yes, War Marshal, Ji-hoon confirmed. What we've shown you is the foundation that every human soldier learns. Basic physical training, standard endurance protocols, fundamental combat skills. Our truly elite soldiers train far beyond this. How far beyond? Threxnor's voice was very quiet. Minji answered. We have units that train in environments you would consider uninhabitable. Soldiers who operate at altitudes where oxygen is so thin that most species would lose consciousness. We have underwater combat specialists who can hold their breath for minutes at a time while fighting. We have mountain warfare experts who can operate in temperatures that would freeze most beings solid. Daehyun added, we have urban warfare specialists who can clear buildings room by room, fighting in close quarters for hours. We have long-range reconnaissance soldiers who can stay hidden in enemy territory for weeks, surviving on almost nothing. We have paratroopers who jump from aircraft into combat zones. We have dozens of specializations, each requiring years of additional training beyond the basics. A Vrel council member spoke up, its multiple voices harmonizing. This seems excessive. Why create so many specialized warriors? Why not use technology to bridge these capability gaps? Because technology fails, Ji-hoon said simply. Machines break. Power runs out. Systems malfunction. But a soldier who is trained in freezing water until they can function through the cold? That ability doesn't require batteries. A soldier who has run hundreds of miles until they can navigate by feeling alone. That skill works even if all sensors fail. He continued, we use technology, of course. We have advanced weapons, communication systems, all the tools of modern warfare. But we never rely solely on technology. Because the moment you do, the moment you depend completely on your equipment, that's when it will fail. And if your soldiers can't function without it, they're helpless. Sora brought the discussion back to philosophy. There's another phrase we use, embrace the suck. It means accepting that suffering is coming and choosing to face it head on. Not avoiding it. Not trying to make it easier. Actually embracing it as a teacher. She looked around the chamber. When we train in freezing water, we don't just endure the cold. We learn to function in it. When we train while exhausted, we don't just survive the fatigue. We learn to make good decisions despite it. Every hardship in training is a lesson, and the lesson is always the same. You are capable of more than you think. Hyunwoo added, this philosophy extends beyond military training. Human athletes train the same way. They push their bodies to failure, then push further. Human explorers deliberately go to the most dangerous places on Earth to test themselves. Human scientists work through exhaustion to solve problems. It's cultural. We admire people who suffer through difficulty to achieve something great. The council elder was silent for a long moment. Then it asked a question that silenced the entire chamber. Are you saying that your entire species, not just your warriors, practices this philosophy of voluntary suffering? Yes, Elder, Ji-hoon confirmed. Not everyone to the same degree. Not everyone chooses military service or extreme challenges. But the philosophy is there. We teach our children that effort matters more than talent, that practice beats natural ability, that persistence conquers obstacles. These aren't just military values. They're human values. War Marshal Threxnor spoke again, and now his voice carried something new. Respect. We Kraliks have a saying, the strong survive. It means that those born strong deserve their place at the top. But you humans have a different approach, don't you? Ji-hoon nodded. We say, the strong survive but the trained thrive. Birth gives you potential. Training determines what you do with it. A naturally strong warrior who doesn't train will lose to a weaker warrior who trains constantly. This is proven in our combat sports, our military history, our entire culture. Minji stepped forward. Council Elder, you asked what drives us. Here's the truth. We're driven by the knowledge that we're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most naturally gifted. We're just the ones who refuse to let that stop us. We train harder because we have to. We push further because we must. And we never quit because quitting means accepting that our limitations define us, and humans don't accept that. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every being present was processing what they'd heard. The humans hadn't just shown physical capability, they had revealed a completely different philosophy of warfare, one based not on natural advantages, but on deliberate cultivation of resilience through controlled suffering. The ancient energy being spoke softly. You have shown us something we have never seen before. Other species prepare for war. You live in a constant state of warfare against your own limitations. Every day is a bat. The council deliberated for 3 hours. The humans waited in a side chamber, knowing that their fate and possibly the fate of Earth's relationship with the galaxy hung in the balance. They sat quietly, some reviewing data, others simply resting. Ji-hoon noticed that even now, even in this moment of uncertainty, his team maintained their discipline. Daehyun was stretching. Sora was organizing her medical kit. Hyunwoo was performing equipment checks. They couldn't help themselves. Training was too deeply ingrained. Finally, the call came. The council was ready to announce its decision. The humans walked back into the main chamber. The gallery was even more crowded now. Word had spread throughout the station that something unprecedented was about to happen. Beings pressed against every available space, wanting to witness this moment. Council Elder Morthus stood, its crystalline form catching the light and scattering it across the chamber. We have discussed what we have witnessed. We have debated the implications, and we have reached a decision. The chamber fell silent. Every being present held their breath. The Galactic Council votes to grant humanity full membership, the Elder announced. But this membership comes with a designation that has never been used before. We are creating a new classification specifically for your species. A holographic display appeared, showing Earth surrounded by new symbols and designations. Humanity is hereby designated as a Tier 1 warrior culture. This classification recognizes not just capability but philosophy. It acknowledges that your approach to warfare is fundamentally different from anything we have encountered. The crowd erupted in noise. Some cheered, some protested. Many simply talked excitedly to their neighbors. The Elder raised a hand for silence. Furthermore, we are opening a new program. Any species that wishes to learn human training methodologies may request human instructors. We believe that the galaxy as a whole can benefit from understanding your approach. War Marshal Threxnor stood. The chamber quieted immediately. His voice, when he spoke, carried through the space with authority. I wish to be the first to request human instructors. The Kralix Empire wants to learn. This announcement sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Kralix, the galaxy's greatest warriors for 300 years, were asking to learn from the humans. It was unprecedented. Other voices joined in. The Vrel requested teachers for endurance training. The Shardborn wanted to understand the psychological principles. Species after species stepped forward, requesting access to human training methods. Ji-hoon stepped forward, raising his hand for permission to speak. The Elder granted it. Council Elder, honored representatives, we accept this responsibility. But I must be clear about something. Teaching you how we train is the easy part. Teaching you why we train this way is much harder. He looked around the chamber. Your species became warriors to conquer, to expand, to demonstrate superiority. We became warriors to survive. Earth is what we call a death world. For 200,000 years our planet tried to kill us. Extreme weather that could freeze or cook us within hours. Predators that hunted us when we had no natural defenses. Diseases, natural disasters, famines, droughts. 1,000 different ways to die. Minji continued. We didn't develop our philosophy because we wanted to be strong. We developed it because the weak died. The ones who gave up didn't pass on their genes. The ones who couldn't endure didn't survive to have children. For thousands of generations, Earth filtered humanity. And what was left were the ones who refused to quit. The ones who could suffer and keep going. The ones who saw impossible odds and tried anyway. Daehyun added, So yes, we can teach you our exercises. We can show you our training protocols. We can share our techniques. But we can't give you our history. We can't give you 200,000 years of evolutionary pressure. We can't make you understand in your bones what we understand. That suffering is the price of survival, and we are willing to pay it. Sora spoke next. There's something else you need to know. Our training isn't just physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. When we push a human to their limits and then push them further, we're not just building strength, we're building belief. The belief that they can do more than they thought possible, that their limits are not fixed, that they can grow. She paused, making sure everyone understood. This belief is powerful. It changes how humans see themselves. A human who has survived brutal training believes they can survive anything. A human who has pushed past their limits in training believes they have no limits. This confidence, this unshakable belief in their own capability, is what makes human warriors so dangerous. Yunwu brought up data on the holographic display. We have centuries of data on training effectiveness. We know exactly how much stress the human body can take before it breaks. We know how to push right up to that line without crossing it. We know how to create warriors who are physically capable, mentally tough, and emotionally resilient. He changed the display. But here's the critical point. This data is specific to human biology. What works for us might not work for you. What pushes a human to grow might break a Kralix. What builds a human's endurance might destroy a Vrel's hive connection. We can share our methods, but each species will need to adapt them to their own biology and psychology. War Marshal Threxnor listened carefully. Then he asked, "If this is true, if your methods might not work for us, why offer to teach at all?" Jihun answered, "Because the core principles are universal, War Marshal. Progressive overload works for any biology. The idea that stress creates adaptation is fundamental to life itself. The concept that mental toughness matters as much as physical strength applies to any thinking being. We can teach the principles. You can adapt the implementation, the ancient energy being floated down from its seat. I have observed your species carefully, humans, and I believe I understand something important. You don't train to become warriors. You train to become better than you were yesterday. Warriors are just what you become along the way." Jihun smiled. "Yes, Elder, that's exactly right. We have a phrase, always be improving. It doesn't matter if you're the best. It matters if you're better than you were before." This philosophy applies to everything we do. Athletics, academics, arts, warfare. We are always trying to grow, always trying to improve, always pushing for more. The Elder was quiet for a moment. "This is why you will be dangerous, humans. Not because you are strong now, but because you will be stronger tomorrow. Not because you know much now, but because you will know more later. You are not a static threat. You are an evolving one. And the galaxy will need to understand this." A junior council member, a being covered in flowing liquid metal, spoke up. "What about those who fail? You said most candidates fail your elite training. What happens to them?" Sora answered, "They try again. Or they find other ways to serve. Failure in one area doesn't mean failure as a person. We teach that failure is data. It tells you what you need to work on. A human who fails training the first time often succeeds the second or third time because they learned what they needed to improve." She continued, "We have another phrase. Failure is not falling down. Failure is staying down. As long as you get back up, as long as you try again, you haven't failed. You've just found a way that doesn't work, and you can try a different way." The chamber was absorbing all of this. The philosophical implications were staggering. A species that saw failure as a learning opportunity, that believed limitations could be overcome, that practiced suffering to build strength. No wonder they were so resilient. War Marshal Threxnor approached the human delegation directly. He stood before Jihun, towering over the human commander. But there was no threat in his posture. Instead, he extended one of his 4 hands in the human gesture of respect he had learned. "Commander Jihun, I came here expecting to see weak beings who would embarrass themselves. I am leaving with a request. Will you personally oversee the training of my warriors?" Jihun clasped the massive hand with both of his own. "It would be an honor, War Marshal. But I must warn you, your warriors will hate me before they respect me. That's how our training works. We push until you want to quit, and then we push more." Threxnor's eyes gleamed. "Good. My warriors have grown comfortable. They rely on their natural strength. They have forgotten what it means to struggle. Perhaps they need to remember." Over the next week, something remarkable happened across the station. Warriors from dozens of species began attempting human-style training. The results were mixed. A group of Kralix warriors tried the basic running protocol. They lasted 15 minutes before collapsing in exhaustion. They had never trained their cardiovascular systems because they never needed to. Their battles were short and explosive. The concept of sustained effort was foreign to them. But they got back up. They tried again the next day. And the next. And slowly, painfully, they began to improve. The Vrel attempted the watch rotation system. Their hive mind made it complicated because they were used to all sleeping at once. But they worked at it, designating smaller groups to maintain awareness while others rested. It went against their nature, but they persisted.